able to just select it.
No, I'm just gonna share the.
Okay.
I don't want any glitches. All right. So we're gonna watch Breakfast in the Classroom. This is an initiative that was put on by Judy Villeneuve Dice here. When she was, she'll give you the background to it. So just take a look at this in New York City. Hope we don't have.
At the 1,800 public schools across New York City's 5 boroughs, 1.1 million students arrive each school day to engage in the learning essential to securing a bright future. Across the city with Breakfast in the Classroom, the number of students eating breakfast increased from 30% to 65%.
When children come to school each day, it is our responsibility as principals to make sure all of our students are ready to learn.
Fresh fruit, dairy, protein-enriched, and whole-grain food, purchased from New York steak growers, is served each morning.
This feeding initiative recognizes that a child can be hungry in any school district and provides the classroom eating option to children that did not eat at home, missed cafeteria service, or arrived late.
Children lining up to go directly to their classrooms may take a bag breakfast from a grab-and-go station. Children may also pick up breakfast from insulated transporter bags delivered daily to each classroom.
Our students' favorite time of the day is breakfast in the classroom because students can put their things away and get settled down to eat comfortably with their classmates.
At first, I was very skeptical because I thought it would be messy and distract from instruction time. I've grown to really appreciate the program because I've seen the academic, social, and emotional benefits for my students.
All students need a healthy breakfast to think clearly, concentrate on learning, and perform better in class. The Office of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning developed an activity guide with recommendations to integrate meaningful instruction with breakfast in the classroom.
As a school nurse, we work with parents, teachers, and principals to keep children with allergies safe. For each child with the required medical form on file, we create a specific allergy plan.
My child has allergies, and I know that he is safe. The nurse explained to me what is in the food, and I talked to my son about when he needs to take a fruit instead of something he's allergic to. He loves eating in the classroom with his friends, and I love the money and the time it saves me in the morning.
You see how much more attentive the children are after they eat. It's also nice to see that the children who aren't eating breakfast quietly work beside their classmates who are having breakfast.
Spills are minimal because the children are already used to opening up similarly packaged food items. Cleanup is quick and simple. Then on with the school day.
Thanks for sharing that. So it's very important to understand, and I think this is a very good example of how data can actually drive change in school, specifically around ensuring children's success. So Breakfast in the Classroom started out as strictly a research project. We at the Department of Education realized that our most vulnerable students, unfortunately, were the students that were coming from the households that had the lowest socioeconomic backgrounds. And so they were not eating in the cafeteria because the fact is that they felt ashamed that they were the ones having free food. So the research that we were able to find, of course, started with just looking and seeing what are the alternatives to getting students to eat. So our research went as far as Japan, and we ended up finding out that Japan had a very successful food program where the students ate in the classroom, cleaned up after themselves, and actually what it did is it reduced the instances of students going to the nurse. We'd come to find out from the research that we had engaged in with nurses that a lot of the times when students were leaving the class, losing instruction time, they were actually not sick, they were actually hungry. So that became a priority for our organization because we realized that we need our students, and as you all know, to have as much instruction time in the classroom as possible. And what I want to know, if anybody can put in the chat, because Dr. Dice was talking about the community, the school community. How many members of the school community did you see in this video? It's important to understand that the principal, although leads the school, there are lots of different people involved in a successful administration of these kinds of programs for the benefit of students. So I would love if everybody can just drop in the chat, who did they see in the solution of ensuring that kids get fed, and how were they participating in that process to build that school community around the learning initiative. I'm going to take a look at the chat. Just start dropping in whatever stakeholders you identified. I can throw in one. We had the school nurse. We had a couple of, thank you. Excellent. Got school nurse on here. Who else? I don't want to give away any other answers. Who else did you see out there? Teachers, principals, delivery guys. Yes, yes, absolutely. All right, perfect. Perfect. And I want to tell you, the principal who actually hosted at their school for this video was the one that hated the program the most. And that's the one I learned the most from. Because she had so many issues that she didn't like about the program, it became very important to understand and get that data qualitatively from her, what needed to be done in order to ensure that kids were successful. So now I just wanted to give you an actual example of how data is used to drive change in school. Now we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so when we're talking about, considering what policy does, we have to think of our why as educators and in the roles that we play. And ultimately, we are on a trajectory. We get our students very young, and what we need to do is anticipate the needs that they're going to have in the future. We need to, now we're moving into, a global economy. We have moved into it. We need to be able to anticipate what those needs are going to be. We also realize that our kids are on technology a lot more than they used to be in the past. So their social skills are starting to diminish. So how do we incorporate the type of social skills that'll keep them mentally sound and easy to work with and be able to work in teams, as well as social emotionally, without them being having the interaction and being on computers more than in the past? What we're finding out is a lot of depression is coming as a consequence of having that isolation with technology. So these are the things we need to keep in mind when we're designing around education goals for the schools, because what we ultimately want, and that's when they're all grown up, right? We want whatever policy that we've established and we've continued throughout their educational process to result in competent young adults, prepared to successfully perform in whatever capacity they choose to in their life and in society. And as Dr. Dice had said earlier, that's very important because education isn't for them and themselves alone. It's really for their contribution to the world and the people around them. Next slide, please. So this is very basic. I have some data here that I think we all know, right? The fact is the more education you have, the less unemployment chances there are, right? So the less education you have, the harder it is to find a job, because those jobs that can employ the most people, unfortunately, they have so many that it's very easy to get. And so you have a number of people, unfortunately, that don't get employment because there's just too many options. The more education you have, the more specialized you become, the more sought out you are for employers, and more capable you are of being an entrepreneur and starting your own company. So that's why the more education you have and the more information you have to apply, it's not the education itself, but to apply to society's goals and challenges, decreases the likelihood of you being unemployed, because you can either work for a company that demands the skills, or you can create a company of your own where your skills are beneficial to society, that you've identified an issue to solve, because all of us serve. The work that we do is in service to everyone. I tell my daughter sometimes, I said, you'll either serve, somebody food, or you'll serve them in a hospital. But the fact is we're all serving in some capacity. We want to do it in a way that brings us the kind of lifestyle that allows us to take care of ourselves and our families, of course. So the only way to do that, of course, is for us to make sure that we're getting the kind of education that we need. And that's why the work that you do is so critically important to establishing that possibility for our students. Next slide.
Hold on. And also to add to that too is the motivation that you give to students when they come in schools thinking that they can't do certain things, they can't attain certain measure of success, then it's up to us as educators to let them know that you can do it and you must do it, because the time you put in to your study now, you'll reap the benefit later, and not the quick making of money, quick turnover of money. It doesn't last, but a longer investment of time and energy in the work, you'll have that for a lifetime. For example, a person who put in the work to get to a master's degree or to learn a skill all the way up to a skill level where you can actually start your own business, nobody can take that knowledge from you. So you have to train and talk to students about investing the time into learning a skill or to studying, to put in the time and energy into that studying so that they can maximize their own learning over a long period of time.
Absolutely. So what is school data? I'd like if you could add in the chat, when you think of school data, can you tell me what comes to mind? Think of the kind of information you would like to know in order to make better decisions in your school. And think about the kind of who it is you want that information from. Attendance data, okay, very good. What else do we have? Thank you for that contribution. Deviant behavior, test scores, okay. School history, oh, that's very interesting. All right, continue. Put some more data points in the chat, please. Socioeconomic data, excellent. Okay. Disability data, all right. So most of the data that is coming in is quantitative data. I'm going to challenge you. Can you tell me some qualitative data that you would also like to see? Achievement, anecdote, notes, okay. Keep going. Qualitative data. That's achievement. That's quantitative. Let's hear about qualitative data that you think might help. You understand your students better, your community better. Let's see. What are your thoughts? Allergies, okay. Notes on students, okay, excellent. Okay, great. Thank you for those contributions. The large majority of the data that has been suggested is quantitative. And those of you who, I'm sure most of you, but just to reiterate for those who may not know, quantitative is numeric data. It's static data that is used just to record the quantity of an instance of a particular occurrence. Qualitative data, on the other hand, are interpretive, perspective data that comes from the opinions and observations of people that helps to inform the quantitative data. Okay, so let's say you have students, for example, who are scoring poorly in a school that has a large number of second English language learners, and they're getting D's and F's, and you don't understand why, because the teachers are all excellent. You end up finding out when you go and talk to the school community and talk to the families that the kids are not in school all the time, right? They're transient. They're moving from community to community, for example. Or there is, so they have housing issues that might be contributing to that. You end up finding out that the teachers in the school might not speak the language of the students that are coming in. These are conversations that you have to have in order to find out what is behind the data. So that qualitative data speaks to and helps to inform the quantitative data that speaks only to attendance perhaps and their scores. And so once you know what those other challenges are, you can start to develop policy practices and suggestions that you obviously test on your community, find out if that is what they think they need and if they think that'll be successful, and then you try to implement them, and then you recalibrate and see again, take the data again and identify whether or not there's an increase in the quantitative data that you are collecting as a result of solving that problem, right? And that's a iterative process. It's constant because you're always finding out about criteria that you weren't aware of and variables that became that are unknown to you. So associating your research when you're collecting data with every stakeholder in your school community is very important. So one of the practices that we do at the Department of Education here in New York City is that we actually do a survey at the beginning of the school year. And then we get the results by the end of the school year, and we ask a whole lot of questions to help guide all of the different initiatives that are developed. So if you could go to the next slide. So the kinds of general big item concepts or categories that we look into is, of course, these items. We have school curriculum. Obviously, why do we need school curriculum? The curriculum is what guides the learning that's going to take place in the classroom. So curriculum is very important, but it must be the type of curriculum that can meet the needs of that school community, right? And so you need to be selecting the right curriculum for the right community. Then you have school climate. Are people happy? Is it safe? Are the values that Dr. Dice was talking about earlier, the culture of the school, is that clear? Is that something that's constantly communicated? And are we improving that school climate and making everybody feel safe and happy to be in that space? Because teachers can't teach well unless they feel happy and safe, and students can't learn unless they're in that environment as well. So those are policies that have to do more operationally that need to be developed in order to ensure that school climate is a positive environment. Now, the program that we mentioned earlier it was a school food program, but that's very critical to understanding that food is directly associated with a child's ability to be able to focus, especially food that is high in protein. Protein is long-term energy, right? So having some sort of basic understanding of how food contributes to the learning would also encourage schools to be able to come up with some sort of a program to ensure that kids are getting what they need in order to be able to enough energy that they can focus in and learn, because everything is about learning. Then school facilities. Obviously, you don't want them to be rained on. Or any other event that could happen just because of the facilities that they're in. I remember when I first started doing this work in operations, we had light bulbs that in our city schools that had been in buildings since 1978, and there was a chemical that dripped out of one of the light bulbs and landed on the hand of a child and burnt right through their skin. And so as a result of that, obviously we were sued and we lost, and we ended up having to replace all the light bulbs throughout the school. But what you want to do is you want to anticipate these challenges in developing school facility protocols in anticipation of what could happen. Inspections policy has to be developed around inspections of facilities in order to be able to prevent those kinds of horrible things happening in a classroom and affecting the health and safety of children. So, and finally, there is busing or transportation. It doesn't have to be busing, but ensuring that kids get to school to learn. That's very important. And one of the things that I did in graduate school actually was participated in a program in Ethiopia, where the girls were not going to school because on the number of days that they were having their menstruation. So I worked with a nursing organization and Columbia University to teach the young girls how to create sanitary napkins out of their own Ethiopian cotton. So that increased the number of days that they could be in school, and it increased the graduation rates. So transportation, they were still walking, but as far as making sure that students get to school, that's just an example of a number of things that might need to be considered, but you need to know the community to know what the needs are in order to create policy to ensure that they are getting to school so that they can learn. So it doesn't have to be busing. It could be a number of other opportunities that can be created through school policy. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Also, if we were meeting with you guys in person, then we'll ask you to do some work on one or the other of these 5 different areas to come up with some other examples on how you can evaluate that example to pick out the salient or important parts to it that you always want to focus on in your school to collect data. All right, so this is step 2. So we look at step 1, and Judy did a wonderful job carrying us through what type of data you collect and how you collect data, who are involved in the data collection, right across it. And you can see that it's not just the principal. So a lot of times we talk to principals in America as well as in the Caribbean, and then they would say to us, oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't do this yet. I am gonna wait until I get this other thing out of the way in order to collect data. But what they're doing is putting everything on their plate as if they're the ones in charge of it and they're doing it, when they're supposed to involve the entire school community. It's the entire, down to the parent and the student. Those are the people who are supposed to be a part of this data collection. And the scope is we're going to get into now. So step 2 is the type of data that you collect. And as Judy was saying, that you have good data and you have data that really doesn't make sense. You have data that you could wait. You could wait to collect that data over a period of maybe 5 years, 10 years. And then you have data that you really need right now. Like the first thing that you put in the chat earlier is attendance data. And you need attendance data on a daily basis to make decisions on what is happening with students. How are they getting to school? Why are they coming to school late? If they're absent, why are they absent? Where are they going? If students are moving from one school to the next, why are they moving school? Maybe they don't like the school anymore. Their parents are moving and so on, for jobs, for whatever reason. You need that data in order to make some decisions around your attendance and around student learning and the benefit for your own school community. So let's dig into the data, what the scope and analysis of data looks like in terms of good data. Good.
So you're going to go to the next slide.
All right. Yes.
Okay. So what I want to get from you guys first is, what is good data when we're talking about that? Like, what does it mean to you? And then I'll give you a little more insight, but I want to hear what your thoughts are when you think of data, because I'm trying to get an understanding of what your relationship with data is. If you could give me some examples, what does it mean to be good data? What does it do for you? What can it help you with?
Yeah, you can drop in the chat.
Yeah, please drop it in the chat. If you have any ideas, just give us an idea of what you're thinking. Good data, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Excellent. Information to make the best decisions. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, let's move on. So that's very good. Thank you for that contribution. Yes, good data will allow you to have enough information. It has to be validated, it has to be accurate, so how the data is collected is very important. And it also has to be complete. Now, obviously, as I mentioned before, data is an iterative process. You don't always get everything you need the first shot. But what it does allow you to do is you start to reliable, excellent, credible, valid, excellent. That's the kind of qualitative description of good data. Thank you for that. We can go to the next slide and we can show, start by showing what bad data looks like. Nothing against UNICEF personally, but I want to show you that this is Belize data that we have. And if you can look at the key below, it only kind of limits you to attendance. This is strictly attendance data. They either entered or completed their education in primary school, secondary school, and it divides into lower and upper secondary school. But you can see that the data that is collected, most of which shows you, yes, that the attendance is highest in primary school, right? And the attendance doesn't, these are people. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, when it's very easy to look at data and forget that we're dealing with human beings. Each child is a data point, but it doesn't change the fact that they are a child, a human being that's going to grow up and contribute to society, hopefully with your help in a positive way. So when I look at this and I say, okay, yes, I understand that in primary school, 97% were attending, but there's a consistent drop off, right? It reduces to 56% as they move forward, and then to 36%. And then it's almost non-existent with people in low socioeconomic brackets, but it's not really that tremendously far off for the people of wealthier means. Now, we don't know what schools that they were attending. We have to keep that in mind. We don't know what resources they had available to them. So we don't know what is causing the difference besides money. What kind of resources do they have access to that perhaps schools that are serving communities that have less money might be able to acquire, right? So that's the kinds of details that you need to know in order to build out a solution to improve the data, and not just the data, but improve the educational outcomes for the students that happen to be less financially wealthy. And I want you to know that financial differences is not a telltale all situation that shows a decrease in educational attainment, and the data will be able to show you that. If you can move to the next slide. Okay, so this is an example. In Jamaica, there is very little difference based on this data between children of low socioeconomic means and wealthy socioeconomic means, right? So this is an example where, for whatever reason, the resources seem to be reasonably equal, but we just don't know if they're the same, right? So we don't know what is the difference. Are there more teachers and there are more people volunteering in the community where there's less people, less economic success, right? We don't know what supports are in place for that differentiation to be so sparingly different, right? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is an example of stronger data. The reason why it's stronger data is because we get a better, I guess you can say, snapshot of who our students are and what they're doing and what stakeholders are involved in their learning. Okay, so what they have collected here, if you just look on the right under school survey, they're collecting data from families, they're collecting data from all of their teachers, right? And they're collecting it from teachers and their opinion about how their principal communicates and literally manages the school, right? And they're also giving feedback on the work that they do, whether or not they're in agreement with the curriculum that's being used, whether or not they're happy with the instruction that they're providing, obviously under the leadership of the principal, and if that's something that they agree with. In this particular instance, these are all positive. Clearly, that's not the case in all schools. Then on the left, you have a quality review. Now, whether or not the resources that they do have, whether or not they're aligned with instructional goals. So, I mean, let's say you have a school that wants to do technology, but if they don't have any computers in the school or any technology, then that's an example of where resources are not aligned with the instructional goals of the school. Okay, and then they get to rate whether or not the school is meeting those goals. It's important to have that level of transparency so that the leaders of a school can identify where they can make improvements. They need to know how people are feeling, and not be sensitive about that type of feedback, because that's an opportunity to grow and to improve and to do better by not only your community, but by the students that you serve, right? And then if you could just look above across the top, the information that has also been collected has to do with student achievement. So you guys had mentioned in the chat earlier about achievement data and scores. Then you have rigorous instruction. What does that mean? Based on what the guidelines, you can't go in, but if you have a goal for your curriculum outcomes for your students and the goals for them to be prepared for it of the next stages, let's say we're in elementary school and we need them to be able to successfully move into the middle school, then we need to make sure that we've met the goals that they're going to need and the academic goals that they need in order to be successful when they get there. You don't want them to go there and then fail because you didn't do your part in the elementary school, right? So that when they talk about rigorous instruction, they're talking about whether or not it meets that goal. Collaborative teachers working together is a school that works well together. That's again what Dr. Dyson said earlier about community. There are all types of communities. There are parent communities, their teacher communities, their principal communities. Everybody needs to be reaching out across the aisle and also vertically, right? And managing up in order to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's being supportive. And that brings us to the next stage of what's collected as far as whether or not it's a supportive environment. Supportive means not only to our students, but to our teachers and to our principal staff, right? So we need to make sure that that's clear. We've already gone over effective school leadership, and then we go into strong family community ties. What are we doing with our parents outside of the classroom to make sure that they are involved in the students' learning? There are lots of questions that you can ask to make sure that you identify what you can do to help support families, because the families are the students' first teacher. And in their statistics have shown again and again with the family's involvement, with parental involvement or grandparents, whoever's taking care of the children at home, it increases the probability of student success in the classroom. And then finally, and above all, is trust. Do people trust each other in the school? Is there safety? Can a teacher feel comfortable going to their principal, asking for help, asking for support? That is their supervisor. That's what supervisors are there for. That trust is very important. And can another teacher ask another teacher for support? Can a student ask a teacher for support and get the feedback that they need? And can parents come to teachers and feel that they can trust them to relay whatever concerns that they have about those students? That trust goes in all directions, right? And that's part of building the school community. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is another example of what this kind of data looks like. This is if you can look at the row on the left under topic, you have the different categories. You have parent and principal trust. You literally have parents saying or rating whether or not they trust the principal who leads their school. Inclusive leadership, that has to do with teachers feeling like they can participate in the leadership in the school in some capacity within the parameters of their role. So let's say you have some teachers that are really excellent at leading math instruction. Are they getting the opportunity to do so? Is the principal making room for them to be able to contribute to improving all of the teacher's ability to be able to do math instruction well based on the experience that person has amassed? Outreach to parents. That's also been graded here. The school has done very well, actually, and I can assure you that this is not always the case. But outreach to parents, how is the communication being done? Is it being done in their home language? If there is a dialect that they speak, is that dialect being used to leverage accurate and clear communication with those families? You don't have to, a lot of families, unfortunately, depending on their relationship with the English language, for example, will feel very intimidated and uncomfortable talking to people that are speaking above them. And they feel a lot more comfortable if you're speaking in a language that they can understand. So that's very important. And then, as I mentioned, the parent-teacher trust. And finally, parent involvement in school. Are they being invited to volunteer? Are they being invited to sit in the classroom and engage and watch and really experience what their students are doing? Obviously not every day of the year, but are there opportunities being made so that they can remain part of the community? This is the kind of data just to keep in mind that can be collected in order to improve any aspect of what is happening in the school. And I would strongly recommend just to pick one, develop questions around that one criteria that you're looking to improve, and then expand in other areas until you build up, a substantive understanding of what the needs are in your school community. Next slide.
We need to, oh, we're almost.
Yeah, we're almost done. So this is one of the same. I gave you guys really excellent slides about how things are going, but these are an example of older students. And then you want to see if they're college ready. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this presentation, that we want to take them from young people to adults ready for the next stage of their lives. And not all of us are going to four-year colleges, and nor do we need to. But we need them to have acquired a certain number of skills that allows them the opportunity to choose whether or not they're going to go into a technical school. Technical training and skills are actually very in demand right now with the increased use of technology, right? And mechanics and equipment. So it's nothing to scoff at or to look down on. So what we want to make sure is that we're collecting the data to demonstrate that where our students are acquiring the skills that are best suited for them in order to ensure that they'll be successful later. And you can see from this this data here that we're tracking how they're doing in their different college level courses, for example. We're tracking whether the number of students who have graduated and gone on to other universities at that school. We're also looking at how many people are obviously female, male, English language learners, and students with disabilities. And that, of course, expands across disabilities, severe to mild, but they're all included because they all need support. And people have even said that being a genius can also be something that needs extra support, the type of support that maybe an intellectual disability would have if they, for example, have ADHD and they learn quickly, but they might have a problem, staying still. So, knowing what the challenges are for each of the individual students is also going to help solve problems and develop policies to support them in their learning so that they can all graduate successfully. Next slide. Okay, so designing policy backwards. All right, so what that really means is the only way to really design good quality policy is to know what you want out of the policy, the end goal, right? So what do we have here? Teachers, technical skills, and instructional design. What type of data was used? How did we make changes based on the data? Enhancing academic outcomes for boys. What types of data was used? How did we make changes based on that data? These are the kinds of things you start to think about because what you want to do is achieve the goal. So in this case, you want to achieve, for example, enhancing academic outcomes for boys. Well, what does that look like? You have to really start to think, well, okay, well, what do we want our students to come out learning? And what is it, what kind of skills and jobs do we want them to have? Okay, so once we identify the job, then we start to look at, well, what do they need to know in order to get to that point? And what are the building blocks to get there? So this is how you design good policy. It's not about putting, being sent in a million directions and say, I'm just going to learn this, read this book, and I'm just going to learn this math. It is not the way to design true and effective curriculum. It really isn't, because you want them to be learning and reading about and engaging with math in a way where you're using real life examples. And those examples should be consistent with the goal that you want them to reach. Okay, so just keeping that in mind. Let's see, go to the next slide.
No, the other thing is to
okay.
Why policy design is supposed to be backwards is because you want to make sure that you have the end goal in mind, and you're communicating that end goal to your stakeholders all the time. You're communicating the end goal. Another thing too is to have the end similar to like a GPS system. So you look for the destination, and then you find ways to get to your destination. So it's similar to that, where you as the leader or the principal or whoever you put in place to guide decision making based on policy, that they create an end goal, and that end goal is based on national policy for education and so on. And then you charter out a way to get to those policy decisions. And also you carry the people along with you. You carry your stakeholders, which means that the communication must be key. And if you can't communicate properly, then I would suggest you hire somebody who is pretty good with communicating policy or communication in general, so that you tell them what to communicate, where you want to reach, and that they communicate in order to get buy-in to the process. Because a lot of people don't really see the end goal. What they see is tomorrow. They see today decision, and they see tomorrow. For example, I'll give you a really quick example. If you want to design like a lunch program in your school, all of these students who are hungry, they want to eat now. You're in the back, you're thinking, okay, I need a sustainable program for my students and whoever is in the school. I need them to be eating 24/7 for the next 5 years, 10 years. That's what you're seeing. But these students and the staff, they want to eat today, they want to eat tomorrow. So all the decisions that they're making right now is to get to the kitchen. And so what you will turn out doing is, instead of investing with a farmer down the street and say, listen, get your cash, what do you call it? Crop, the cash crop now, whenever you get your cabbage in, your carrots in, and so on, just give me the ones that you are not going to be taking to the market. Give me it at a lower price, and I will take those into my kitchen, in my canteen in the school, and we will use that to make vegetable for the students. And over time, I will have partnership with about 5 different farmers in the community, right? No, that might not happen for tomorrow. That might not happen for next week. But when it starts to happen and they start to realize that they're actually getting a little bit of income from the school because they start doing that, then they will start to produce more, and they will start to strategically produce more so that they have money right around the clock, because they don't want you to be getting other people to do it. But what those students and the staff will not see is that 5 years down the road, what they see is, I am hungry now, so let's buy some food. And you might spend more money every single day buying cooked food from the shop down the street or the restaurant down the street to feed them, instead of investing in a long-term project like the partnership with the farmers in the community. So that is one way of looking at policy design from backwards and for the long-term sustainability. And I think, Jude, we're practically finished here.
Yes, I just want to say you were really going to very complex areas. We would have to do another conference on stratifying the data once you have it, like short-term. You're talking about short-term goals, yes, medium goals, long-term goals. And one of the things that I want to mention also is that data because in those countries, obviously, that have less financial means, good quality, valid data can help to support our school leaders to be able to get money internationally to support them, because they're not going to take your word for it that you have these needs. But if you do start to collect data and it becomes a longitudinal data collection over like 2-3 years, and you've demonstrated a trend, and you've demonstrated that you are having, you're helping yourself, you're making some improvements, but it's in these areas in particular that you've identified that you need additional support, data collection can be your cash cow. It can be a way to be able to attract money for your school, and you don't have to be completely dependent upon the government itself, but you can get assistance outside from, philanthropists and lots of other people, good doers that would be able to help. So data is important for everybody.
Yeah, like us. All right, that's a plug right there. Let's all right, thank you so much for listening. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and especially for the people who actually drop something in the chat. We really need to be more engaging. I know it's dinner time, but let's all engage ourselves here. Thank you so much for listening. Seriously, thank you very much. And we hope that you learned something from this to take back to your school. We're going to hand over back to Mr. Dwarika for questions, I think, or for overview.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Dice. Thank you very much, Judy. Right. And of course, it is always a pleasure. Every time I listen to Dr. Dice, every time I listen to Judy, I learn something more every time. Right. And of course, I want to start off with today. Apart from the data-driven decisions, I will go into that in a short bit, but something that really captivated me in the discussion this afternoon is policy is designed backward.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, while we may be aware of it, oftentimes we have to remind the policymakers that policy is designed backward, because they only want to talk about tomorrow, what we can get from the policy now, right? Without understanding the end goal. We want to see the end goal. Where is the policy going to take us, right? What can we achieve? What can we obtain? What can we derive from the policy? So that to me was very much instrumental. And it goes to the whole concept of what we were discussing today in terms of data and using data to make decisions. So if we understand that policy is designed in a backward scenario, a backward model, right? Because we need to understand what the end goal is. It is important that we use data. And oftentimes, especially, in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago, one of the things is that we have the data, we can get the data, we can access the data, but we do not use the data to make the kinds of decisions that we should be making. And that is why it is critical that we engage in discussions like these to understand the value of data and the value that data has to contribute in making decisions. And I want to share with my colleagues an example, right? Actually, 2 examples. For example, if the association goes to the Minister of Education in Trinidad and Tobago and says, we have a discipline problem in schools in Trinidad and Tobago. What are you doing about it? Or what can you do about it? The minister might say, what discipline problem are you speaking about? I don't know, but we don't have a discipline problem in Trinidad and Tobago. But if the association goes to the minister and says, Madam Minister, we have a discipline problem in Trinidad and Tobago, right? We have 101 cases of truancy in at-risk schools in Trinidad and Tobago. We have 7 cases of an assault of teachers in Trinidad and Tobago. We have 41 cases of use of drugs in Trinidad and Tobago. We have 25 cases of gambling in 5 secondary schools in Trinidad and Tobago. We have 61 fights recorded in video and shared via social media in Trinidad and Tobago. More than likely, we are going to hear from the minister that we have a problem and we need to begin to deal and to treat with the problem. And that is the importance and that is the value of using data to strengthen our position, to strengthen our argument, right? So again, I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us, right? So I'm just going to stop there before I continue. Because anytime I hear Judy and Dwayne, I get excited about data because data is my thing, right?
Yes.
So the floor is open. Any questions that you may have in terms of the use of data and how can we use it in our classrooms, how can we use it in our schools to make better decisions for our schools, how can we make it use it for our districts, for our districts, and of course the Ministry of Education, so we can get the best coming out of the schools in Trinidad and Tobago. Right? Any questions, any comments that we would want to share with our presenters?
Yeah,
no questions? No comments?
Say something, somebody.
Right, Donnell, go ahead.
Good night, Doniel from Tobago. Thanks for the little information and the gentle reminders you provided. I did arrive late due to unfortunate circumstances, so I was wondering if we might have access to the full session, please.
Right, so Donnell, I did record most of the session about I think I lost the first 5 minutes, but the session is recorded, and I'm willing to share the recording, the link to the recording, as soon as I download it. Yeah.
Okay, I've put my
all right.
email address
since
in
you're
in
Tobago, right? You can just get in contact with Marjorie, Miss Carrington,
Dion,
or Dion, right? And you can, and they would share my number with you, and I can share it with you.
Okay, thanks.
Right. So, can or should data be collected about teachers as well as students to make the teachers' communication? I'm just reading off the chat.
Yes, I can take that is. The short answer to it is yes, you should. I think Anjali, you can talk to the very short answer is you should be collecting data on everything that you do in the school. There shouldn't be a day when nothing goes, like something goes by without documentation and reflection. You should, especially when you talk about teachers' community. Is it communication or community, whichever one, to make it better, you have to collect data on that. And data is like qualitative data. How are they doing? Do we have some troublemakers in our faculty? Do we have some peacemakers? Who can we turn to if somebody is arguing too much, not doing the work, or so on and so forth? So yes, what do you think, Julie?
Well, when you're talking about collecting data from children, for example, which is very important, it actually speaks very directly to social emotional check-ins. So the kind of data doesn't have to be paper data. It could be something as simple as draw a face of how you're feeling right now, or give me a high five, or give your friend next to you a high five if you're feeling good about this lesson. That kind of data, you can literally, next to their name, just check it off. You have a list of students you can check to see, because that is going to help you for social emotional awareness as to identify who might need additional support. Those quiet students, those introverted students definitely can benefit from that level of interaction. So when we think of data, we shouldn't think about it as a very constrictive, formal thing all the time. We have to think about being aware of what's happening in our community, happening with our students, that we can always think about finding a solution to help support. That's really all it is. And so in whatever way that you can be creative in doing that, that's what needs to happen. A kid that's losing their temper, obviously you need to be able to see that. And before it happens, because you're going to get to know your kids better, the more you check in with them, you can see when they're leading up to an outburst. So you can prevent a lot of these things, and you can have a corner where they can read quietly or play with something tangible in order to start teaching them how to control their emotions. Because a lot of the violence that teenagers tend to experience statistically is shown as a result of them not having learned how to manage their feelings. So that whole social emotional piece that we can integrate in the classroom as we're collecting data about those things can help us to move forward. And yes, absolutely, the question about collecting data from teachers. Teachers are the ones doing all the work, right? The hard work in the classroom for hours and hours. Dr. Dice is a teacher. He's up until all hours of the night just grading papers. I mean, I think teachers are made out of something very special, their dedication and their work. And we need to know how they feel. They get burnt out. they get tired, they feel unsupported sometimes. And so our principals and their colleagues, other teachers, they really do need to be checking in with each other. How do you do that? You need to be creative about what is the best way to do it in your school community. What do your teachers want to do? How do they want to present that information? What environment do they want to share that information? You don't just collect data. You find out from the community you want to collect it from, what's the best way to get it from them, where they'll be most receptive to providing the data that you need to make these decisions, right? So make sure, again, that you're always including the community in these decisions, and you're not just top down applying this strategy of, I'm going to take information from you. That doesn't work. You need them to work with you to give them that data, and you can do it in ways where it's congenial and positive for everybody.
Thank you very much, Judy. So before we go to Genevieve's question, I saw Donnell, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. So what advice do you have for a teacher who have done some data collection of herself about the perception of the school and leadership from the parents? Certain information would come and you start to question other teachers, and you gather that the perception of the school, of the parents and the community is not positive in light of the school. And in light of this, the teacher thinks that, hey, if the school can send out some little like a survey to get information, it could start to improve, the school could start to do things to improve that relationship, because at the end of the day, parental involvement is important, but the administration is not willing to make that move. Maybe because of fear of what the results may show. Even for the leadership on the thing, how do the community or the parents view you? So what advice do you have a teacher operating in a school like that?
That's a very good question.
Do you want to answer first?
Yeah, because you have school communities right now that are doing poorly right across the region because of a lack of a productive relationship with the community and the stakeholders that are in that community. So the school operates very independent or isolated from anything that goes on in the community. And many of the people actually send their students elsewhere to go to school. And when they do, they're looking for bad things from the school. Every single time something happens, they're looking at, okay, what's happened now? What is wrong over in that school now? They never think of anything that is positive coming from the school. So that's a very good question. My suggestion is this, that the school create like a hospitality group to repair the reputation, to repair the communicative reputation of the school. And then that hospitality group should be made up not only of people in the school, but people in the community. And you want to pick people who have certain tentacles in certain areas of the community that will help to generate some positive remarks about what is happening in the school, and then create community initiatives in the school. So you bring people in for simple things like reading to students, eating breakfast with students. So you have grandmother, grandfather day or breakfast day for them, grandparents breakfast in morning, a father club, a mother knitting something in the school. So you start with that because you have an end goal of providing a deeper and a more stronger data collection and policy-driven decisions later on. But you cannot go to the more important and serious decisions without trying to repair the relationship and the interaction between the school and the community. So that's where I can go on and on about it, but I want to stop right here so that Adish and Judy can share too.
Yeah, I just want to add, first of all, I want to commend you for collecting the data on your own. I think that's remarkable, and it shows you're very forward thinking, and you have a lot of, frankly, a lot of leadership qualities. So in the role that you play, so that's excellent. But just from a fellow employee, you don't want to step on the toes of your principal or the person in any leadership position. So I don't know what your relationship is with your principal, but if it is a positive relationship, you would have to find a way to be able to share that information, that they would seriously consider you know, coming up with a way in order to solve the problems that you have unearthed as a result of the data. I haven't seen the data questions themselves to know whether or not the questions are deep enough to be able to respond to based on the results, or if there's more investigation that needs to happen in order to really get to the source of it. Dr. Dice is very right. Oftentimes parents feel uncomfortable or aren't as happy with the school because they're excluded from the school. Another thing that's also, you know, they don't get to participate in a way that they think is substantive. Oftentimes the communication isn't strong enough. They don't feel like they're receiving enough feedback and understanding about what's happening inside, and therefore they don't understand the results, and they can't support their student at home. So those are things that could definitely be agitating for a parent. And finally, you know, the idea of community has to be first and foremost, and the concept that we mentioned earlier about them not wanting to find out the truth. This is a fact. A lot of people think, and that's where you get the idea of the head in the sand concept, where people think if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. This fear of data, that's one thing that people will come to learn about the more they get involved in data, is that where the problem is actually the richest place. You want to find out what the problems are. That's where you really get to understand where you can actually make improvements. I mean, I literally go after everybody who hates an initiative because I do so much research before we even try to design it, that it looks great on paper, but great on paper does not mean great in reality. So it's very important for those people who are actually engaging and having these personal opinions, again, that qualitative data, you got to get to the heart of that. And those people that are the most critical are the most valuable to you, to solving those problems, because those are the ones that are verbal about it. A lot of people don't even say anything, but the ones that actually give you the benefit of telling you what the problem is are the ones that give you the hope of solving it. So I wish you all the best in being able to get that communicated in a positive way that doesn't threaten your role or challenge your relationship with your principal. But again, break it down into small parts, maybe one piece of the data. Don't talk about all of the data. Talk about something that's achievable, to if that principal is scared of it. Something that you know can be planned in a small way, one section, get some success on that, and then introduce the rest slowly. Right? You need to build that trust. Again, that trust needs to exist in your school between each other in order to even have this conversation. So all of those different aspects that we covered in the presentation, they definitely all play a role. So keep that in mind. But thank you for doing that. The kids that benefit from you doing that will be very grateful.
Yes, thank you very much, Judy. Thank you very much, Dwayne. And fantastic question, Genevieve. And just to add to what both Dwayne and Judy would have mentioned, I want to share a practical example of what they would have mentioned in terms of the explanation to what would have happened, in, let's say, in Trinidad and Tobago. So we had a similar situation where there were negative comments about the school not good, they're not, the pass rate is low, I don't want to send my child there. And we had all these negative comments coming out, right? I had the opportunity of having to attend to the problem because the principal was scared. He did not know what to do. He did not want to face the parent body in terms of what was happening. So he invited me to come and to share in the discussion. And one of the first things I looked at was the comments that were made. And the comments that were made were by parents. So what we did was that we invited the parents to a meeting because we needed to give them a voice, and we wanted to give them a voice inside the school rather than outside of the school. Because outside of the school, they were doing more damage to the school environment, to the school image, than if they would have come on the inside of the school. And then, of course, coming inside of the school, we could discuss the matter, we could discuss the issues and come up with solutions. Because what happens on the outside is that the matter is thrown out there, and then we have people agreeing with the negative comments, agreeing with it without investigation, without looking for a solution, right? So we had a meeting, and we give the parents a voice inside of the school. And what we found out there was that they were most upset with the performance of the school in the CXC results and whatnot. That is what they were upset with. They were upset with the performance. So what we did was we looked at the performance, and we looked to see what were the problems in the performance. Was it the teachers? Was it the students? Was it the school environment? What were the problems? And when we looked at it and we looked at the data that we have coming from 3 years of successive results, what we realized was that the failures was as a result of non-submission of the SBA. And because we realized that the data showed that the non-submission of the SBA was the problem, the school began to focus on completion of the SBA, so that the students, 90% to 100% of the students, were able to submit their SBAs on time. And because they were submitted on time, 2 years thereafter, the school got the best results they ever got at the CXC. So that is just another example of using the data and going to the questions that was asked both by Genevieve and the question by the question before, right? What possible strategies to be employed data from parents and whatnot? This is what we do. So we have the collaboration. Judy would have alluded to it. Dwayne would have alluded to it. That collaboration is critical, because if we have to get data, we need to give teachers a voice, we need to give the parents a voice, and in some instances, we need to give the students a voice, so that we hear from them what the perspectives are, so that we can get a holistic amount of qualitative and quantitative data, so that we can make the best possible decisions for them. So I just wanted to share that with you as a result, right? As a possible result based on the solutions offered by both Judy and Dwayne. Yeah?
Yes.
Right, so data very critical for referrals, yes. The onset of the pandemic saw a widespread increase in the use of technology in schools. We recognize, however, that not all children are able to navigate successfully. What school policy approach can be used to direct future usage in education in schools? Yeah.
Did you want to go?
So, all right, so that's kind of a big question. That's everybody's facing that around the world, frankly. One of the things that we've had to realize is that the timeline that we had in mind for our students before the pandemic is not a timeline that we can continue to have. Right. Unfortunately, they all experienced a major break in their learning as a result of the pandemic, and they're all at the same place. So nobody's behind anybody else per se. But we do need to focus on recovery. And the recovery is not just delving exclusively into technology, but developing technological skills. Now, I want to be able to explain what that means. The pandemic isolated a lot of students, a lot of families. That was positive in some cases, negative in other cases. But what we came to find out is the isolation created a lot of mental health issues, right? So mental health issues having to do with not being able to express themselves in communities and societies that don't have as prevalent a, what do you call it, therapy culture. So you have a lot of kids that experience these things and they're still recovering and they can't express themselves. And technology has actually worked against them at home because it further isolates them. So when I say developing technological skills aside from the technology, like we're doing tonight, for example, we are having a conversation. We are talking to each other. We know how to engage in a question and answer scenario where we're respecting each other's time, we're respecting each other's ideas and engaging. People don't realize this, but this is how you're going to engage in technology, the same way we're doing tonight. And what we find out as we speak to people in the Caribbean and all over the world, actually, different communities of Caribbean people, And most of them are very reluctant to come on camera and to speak and to engage. We have to make sure that our students are not going to be like that. This is a leadership and I guess global process of understanding what the requirements are to engage in a global economy and a global society. We have to communicate. So for those of us who have access to children in our classroom, we're going to have to use that opportunity to teach them how to have these conversations, to be able to engage comfortably with technology when they have the opportunity, but when the technology isn't there, to be able to engage in discussions that allow them to develop the skills that when they come onto camera, as we are on now, that they come on and they're confident enough to ask questions. They're confident enough to engage in thoughtful reflection on the topics at hand without fear of reprimand, without fear of embarrassment. A lot of the time, our older people in technology are scared. We have to make sure our students aren't going to be scared. So where we do have technology, we need to make sure that we're using it. PowerPoint presentations, we use that when we're engaging online. Kids need to be doing that. You don't need to be attached to a computer with internet in order to start practicing how to develop design a page, how to integrate information on a slide. These are the kinds of things that you can do in Google Slides. These are the kinds of things that we need to make sure our students are having. So yes, where technology is available, definitely use it. Get them comfortable with it. More comfortable than you will ever be. That's where we need them to be. But also keep in mind, what skills are we using when we're engaging in technologies, and use creative ways to develop those skills away from that technology. So when they are in front of it, they can use it without problem.
I think also that to add to that too is the timeline that they need to be flexible. So in policy, writing and communication, people in schools, in different schools, need to have a flexible mindset to say that we might not get there within 6 months or a year, but you're working towards it. And so the smaller steps that we take, for example, you won't have the entire school technology capable in a year, but you have up to 3rd grade, from K to 3rd, the first year, and then you cover off the next one the years after. So I wouldn't be very ambitious where technology is concerned and the affordability of technology, because a lot of money, and a lot of people think that when they're writing policy for technology or even acquiring technology is just the device. The device is one thing, but it's the training to use the device and the security systems that you put on that device for students, and the workshops that you have to build around the management of the devices for teachers and students in terms of your instructional activities that you do on that. That is even more complex than getting the device themselves, and the amount of money that you put in workshops to help somebody train the faculty and the students, and to put the programs on there for students. That too, that needs to be considered as well, because a lot of devices were given to people throughout the pandemic and say, hey, you need to get online and so on. But nobody really think about the long-term, what systems that we need to put in this. And also that a lot of parents actually took these devices and the students not even see them. The parents actually using them for their own benefit. And the kids are around the corner and saying, hey, I need to be online. Why are you not giving my devices? And they're checking their emails or watching videos on these devices, the parents. So there need to be some wide range consideration around policy as it relates to rollout and the timeline, systems of security, and the teaching and learning strategies and systems also on these devices and when to use them. And also is the accountability. Like, what is it that you're going to do to hold students accountable, parents accountable for these devices because they're given to the school or the school provide them for educational purposes. you know. So it's a lot. It's a lot, Antonia. Thank you for asking that question. I know you ask it not for yourself, but for everybody on here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Antonia, for the question. Thank you very much, Judy and Dwayne. I want to just chime in on something that Judy said that's very critical, right? In terms of the technology and coming out of COVID. Yes, the technology is there. Yes, many students were able to access some of them technology for the very first time, right? But what Judy said was that we should never neglect the skill development as well. And that should complement, so that, as Dwayne was alluding to, when the technology is not there, the devices are not there, the students are not at a loss. They cannot throw up their hands and say, okay, well, how can I learn? What can I do? Right? Because the skill was complemented the use of the technology. So therefore, after the device is yours and the parents take the device for their own personal use, the learning continues because the skill has been developed, right? So that is something very critical as well going forward with the use of the technology that we have in schools now, right? So thank you very much for the question and the responses. Any other questions, any other comments? I think the discussion, very engaging, very powerful, very profound.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Questions, comments? No? We were planning this particular workshop for a very long time. So please ask your questions now, right? Because I'm not too sure when I can get both Judy and Dwayne back again. I know they'll be willing. They have done a lot of work for the diaspora throughout the Caribbean and even the United States. Excellent work. And we are very fortunate to have them this afternoon. It's unfortunate that many of the colleagues did not come on. However, I am going to share the link across the Caribbean, right, with our colleagues at the CUT as well, right, so that they would be able to at least listen on the conversation and get some direction and some guidance from the discussion that would have taken place.
Yeah.
Right? Any questions? No? As I said, I don't lose this opportunity.
Yeah, we're gonna have to run in a tiny bit, but I want to say that if you take anything away from this, remember that policy is not supposed to be top down. It's supposed to be everybody. It's everybody all the way down to even the animals that are walking on the street around the building. It takes in even a plant that you plant on that property of the school. It's everything it takes into consideration, the kids and everybody. So don't think that you wait for the government or politics to drive policy in a school setting and a local setting. You can write policy and stick to it. Just make sure that it's in line with the national policy for education, but you can write those policies and for your school, your environment, around the school.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Dwayne. Any final comments, Judy?
Yes, I just want to add something that I've heard that, sometimes there's only one computer in the classroom, and the only way to practice anything and to get good at it is with time. So one of the recommendations that I always have is don't hold the computer to your chest, teachers. Give kids an opportunity. Identify a technology ambassador for the month, for example, and that allows them to build a PowerPoint for you or practice, so that they all have an opportunity in rotation to start developing some of these skills with the one computer that you have in the classroom. And don't be worried because that it's going to break or something like that. Teach them the proper way to approach it, not to abuse it. Let them learn how to engage in technology in a way that's conscientious and careful while they're building the skills. And that'll build their confidence, it'll build their competence, and it'll build their ability to be able to use it when there are more, and they can hit the ground running. So I think that definitely having a technology ambassador in the classroom, and I mean at every grade level, will definitely help to support this goal of getting them, acclimated and comfortable with technology.
Yeah. Right. So I'm not seeing any questions or any other comments. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate both Dwayne and Judy for the work that they are doing in the United States for their schools there, their districts across there, and definitely throughout the diaspora. I've had the opportunity of sharing in some of the sessions that that they have been doing quality sessions and very profound hard work throughout the Caribbean. And of course, it's free of charge. Yeah? These two young people, yeah, they do it out of the greatness of their heart, right? So I really want to God to bless them, to continue to bless them so that they can continue to do the great work that they're doing throughout the Caribbean and of course the United States. On behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, I want to take this opportunity to thank both Dwayne and Judy for coming this afternoon and sharing of their knowledge, their experiences, valuable experiences, I might say, with us here, with the hope that we have a better understanding and how we can use data now to inform the decisions that we make, not only at a policy level, but decisions at a personal level, decisions for our students, decisions for the classroom, decisions for our school, our community, right? So that we can all have a better place to live in, right? So again, on behalf of all of us in Trinidad and Tobago, Dwayne and Judy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. So I'm hoping that you all, the rest of you all will join me again on Sunday when we talk about financial planning. It's critical that we understand the finances and how we can plan for the future, how we can use our finances in a critical way. And that is our next session on Sunday evening from 4. So I invite all to join us right then, and as we continue with the education of our teachers in Trinidad and Tobago. So thank you all. Thanks, Dwayne and Judy, and have a blessed night, everyone.
Thank you.